Looking at the high strangeness and hyperdimensional aspect of the UFO and alien activity, one can say that it is certainly not just a physical phenomena, and these crafts don't seem to have technology like we think in terms of a spaceship. After all, who says that these aliens come from another planet anyway? While NASA's looking for organic life on Mars, the real show is already happening right here, and has been for a long time. Contact has been already made, but it is not how we thought it would have happened. Maybe our physical world is just embedded in what long-time UFO researcher, scientist and astronomer Dr. Jacques Vallée calls a control system. If we look at the world from an informational point of view, and if we consider the many complex ways in which time and space may be structured, the old idea of space travel and interplanetary craft, to which most technologists are still clinging, appears not only obsolete, but ludicrous. Indeed, modern physics has already bypassed it, offering a very different interpretation of what an extraterrestrial system might look like. I believe there is a system around us that transcends time as it transcends space. The system may well be able to locate itself in outer space, but its manifestations are not spacecraft in the ordinary nuts and bolts sense. The UFOs are physical manifestations that cannot be understood apart from their psychic and symbolic reality. What we see in effect here is a control system which acts on humans and uses humans. Vallée also stated that it would be false to say that these UFOs fly like a plane or rocket would. With technology that transcends time, space and gravity, space travel may take on a whole new meaning. One has to wonder why such a topic of immense importance for science and the world is still widely ignored and denied by official culture. Abduction and UFO researcher James Bartley explains, "Unfortunately, the human race has been poorly served by the scientific community. This should come as no surprise, considering the disproportionate amount of funding the scientific community receives from tax-exempt foundations, multinational corporations, the Department of Energy and the Pentagon, just to name a few. To provide such funding and then encourage real scientific study of UFOs would defeat the purpose of the long-standing, well-documented debunking and disinformation campaign against UFO reality. Since scientists are conditioned and trained to discount the reality of UFOs, it is relatively easy to convince some of them to be UFO debunkers, especially if they will be paid for their debunking efforts. Scientists cannot be expected to think or behave any differently. They have been indoctrinated and are in need of funding. I have to laugh when skeptics and debunkers demand scientific proof for UFO sightings and alien abductions. How can science, as controlled as it is today, possibly explain the types of phenomena described by UFO witnesses and alien abductees? UFOs have been seen to divide into numerous parts and fly off in different directions. Conversely, two or more UFOs have been seen to fly towards one another and merge into one object. UFOs have been seen to change shape in mid-flight, and so on. Other researchers and authors also see this phenomena not like a ETs coming from another planet scenario, but something that may have been around far longer than we imagine. The same phenomena seems to have been interpreted and described by the worldview of past cultures, from fairies to demons to vampires to serpents, dragons and other mythological figures. Are there any other hints in ancient history and scriptures that talk about a possible hyperdimensional control system, a paraphysical phenomena which is indigenous to planet Earth? The Gnostics are giving us some insights into the idea of hyperdimensional realities and beings inhabiting them. In Gnostic psychology, the noetic science of the mystery schools, archons are an alien force that intrudes subliminally upon the human mind and deviates our intelligence away from its proper and sane applications. Working through telepathy and suggestion, the archons attempt to deviate us from our proper course of evolution. Their most successful technique is to use religious ideology to insinuate their way of thinking and, in effect, substitute their mindset for ours. According to the Gnostics, Judeo-Christian salvationism is the primary ploy of the archons, an alien implant. In the Gnostic view of human society, the archons are alien forces that act through authoritarian systems, including belief systems, in ways that cause human beings to turn against their innate potential and violate the symbiosis of nature. Because the archons need human complicity to gain power over humankind, anyone who assists them can be considered a kind of archon, an accessory. How do humans assist the archons? One way is by accepting the mental programs of the archons, that is, adopting the alien intelligence as if it were human-based, and implementing those programs by actually enforcing them in society. Another way is by actively or passively conforming to the agenda so proposed and imposed. Their most successful technique is to use religious ideology to insinuate their way of thinking? Now that is very interesting indeed, and puts also the whole New Age world of spiritual teachings as well as religion into a different light, doesn't it? The story of the archons is similar to what Don Juan talked about in The Active Side of Infinity by Carlos Castaneda. Ah, that's the universe at large, Don Juan said, incommensurable, non-linear, outside the realm of syntax. The sorcerers of ancient Mexico were the first ones to see those fleeting shadows, so they followed them around. They saw them as you're seeing them, and they saw them as energy that flows in the universe. And they did discover something transcendental. They discovered that we have a companion for life. We have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our lord and master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protest. If we want to act independently, it demands that we don't do so. You have arrived by your efforts alone to what the shamans of ancient Mexico called the topic of all topics. I've been beating around the bush all the time, insinuating to you that something is holding us prisoner. Indeed, we are held prisoner. That was an energetic fact for the sorcerers of ancient Mexico. Why has this predator taken over in the fashion that you're describing, Don Juan? I asked. There must be a logical explanation. There is an explanation, Don Juan replied, which is the simplest explanation in the world. They took over because we are food for them, and they squeeze us mercilessly because we are their sustenance. Just as we rear chickens in chicken coops, the predators rear us in human coops. Therefore, their food is always available to them. No, 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 I heard myself saying. That is absurd, Don Juan. What you're saying is something monstrous. It simply can't be true, for sorcerers or for average men, or for anyone. Why not? Don Juan asked calmly. Why not? Because it infuriates you? Yes, it infuriates me, I retorted. Those claims are monstrous. I want to appeal to your analytical mind, Don Juan said. Think for a moment and tell me how you would explain the contradiction between the intelligence of man the engineer and the stupidity of his systems of beliefs, or the stupidity of his contradictory behavior. Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our systems of beliefs, our ideas of good and evil, our social mores. They are the ones who set up our hopes and expectations and dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed and cowardice. It is the predators who make us complacent, routinary and egomaniacal. But how can they do this, Don Juan? I asked, somehow angered further by what he was saying. Do they whisper all that in our ears while we are asleep? No, they don't do it that way. That's idiotic, Don Juan said, smiling. They are infinitely more efficient and organized than that. In order to keep us obedient and meek and weak, the predators engage themselves in a stupendous maneuver. Stupendous, of course, from the point of view of a fighting strategist. A horrendous maneuver from the point of view of those who suffer it. They gave us their mind. Do you hear me? The predators gave us their mind, which becomes our mind. The predator's mind is baroque, contradictory, morose, filled with the fear of being discovered any minute now. I know that even though you have never suffered hunger, you have food anxiety, which is none other than the anxiety of the predator who fears at any moment now its maneuver is going to be uncovered and food is going to be denied. Through the mind, which after all is their mind, the predators inject into the lives of human beings whatever is convenient for them, and they ensure, in this manner, a degree of security to act as a buffer against their fear. Looking at Don Juan's words in the light of what we have explored so far, we should maybe put on a different lens when reading Castaneda's books, no matter if Don Juan was real or not, as some people like to argue over. They contain a great amount of esoteric knowledge when read in the right context, much of it resembling Gurdjieff's fourth way teachings. Our reality might indeed be controlled by denizens of a higher reality. Gurdjieff refers to them in the story of the evil magician, cited by Ouspensky in Search of the Miraculous. There is an Eastern tale which speaks about a very rich magician who had a great many sheep. But at the same time, this magician was very mean. He did not want to hire shepherds, nor did he want to erect a fence about the pasture where his sheep were grazing. The sheep consequently often wandered into the forest, fell into ravines, and so on. And above all, they ran away, for they knew that the magician wanted their flesh and skins, and this they did not like. At last the magician found a remedy. He hypnotized his sheep and suggested to them first of all that they were immortal, and that no harm was being done to them when they were skinned, that, on the contrary, it would be very good for them and even pleasant. Secondly, he suggested that the magician was a good master who loved his flock, so much that he was ready to do anything in the world for them. And in the third place, he suggested to them that if anything at all were going to happen to them, it was not going to happen just then, at any rate not that day, and therefore they had no need to think about it. Further, the magician suggested to his sheep that they were not sheep at all. To some of them he suggested that they were lions, to others that they were eagles, to others that they were men, and to others that they were magicians. And after this all his cares and worries about the sheep came to an end. They never ran away again, but quietly awaited the time when the magician would require their flesh and skins. This tale is a very good illustration of man's position. The Sufi were also hinting at manipulation and deception through hyperdimensional forces, especially in regards to people seeking spiritual experiences. William Chittick wrote in The Sufi Path of Knowledge, "Nowadays most people interested in the spirituality of the East desire the experience, though they may call what they are after intimate communion with God. Those familiar with the standards and norms of spiritual experience set down by disciplined paths like Sufism are usually upheld at the way Westerners seize upon any apparition from the domain outside of normal consciousness as a manifestation of the spiritual. In fact, there are innumerable realms in the unseen world, some of them far more dangerous than the worst jungles of the visible world." Al-Arabi himself said, "So preserve yourselves, my brothers, from the calamities of this place, for distinguishing it is extremely difficult. Souls find it sweet, and then within it they are duped, since they become completely enamored of it.